Welcome to the Hoops&Huddle podcast. I am Maliika, and this week I am joined by Alex Squadron. Did I say that right?
You did. Perfect.
He's the writer of a new book that is coming out. I have October 1st. Date you have?
It's interesting. It is the technical publication date is October 1st, but if you order it now on Amazon, you'll get it before that. So uh,
Oh, okay.
you're right though. That is the official date.
I ordered I ordered it on Amazon formally. Yeah, I ordered it on Amazon formally today just to get a physical copy. So I guess I'll get that soon. But his new book is called Life in a G. I absolutely loved it. Minor league basketball and the relentless pursuit of the NBA. It's a grind. You do it for like the dream of joining, becoming an NBA player, but man, is it a grind. So I want to thank Alex for being here and introduce yourself to the people. I know you also write for Slam, so
Mhm.
introduce yourself to the people, your background a little bit.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, and also thank you for reading the book and for your kind words about it. You're one of the first people who reached out to me about it, and just like to hear any feedback at all outside of my family and friends, it was amazing. So thank you so much. Yeah, like you said, I'm Alex Squadron. I've been a sports fan all my life, mainly
Mhm.
basketball. I was lucky enough to work for Slam, which is obviously like the basketball Bible. So I was a writer there for about 3 years full time. I was there for a little longer, part time as well from school, and then really, my main passion was always for writing. So I started to kind of pursue independent projects and this book, which I guess it was 2 years ago now that I first had the idea, to just follow a G League team and write about kind of that, like you said, that pursuit of the NBA dream. And here we are 2 years later, and the book is finally coming out. So it's been super exciting, and yeah, I'm excited to talk about it.
Before we dive into the book, there was a recently an article published in Slam, really highlighting the Jordan Brand's, next generation of leaders like Luka and Zion, Jason Tatum. Why don't you talk about that article a little bit and what it was like, and interviewing them and bringing that piece together?
For sure. Yeah. So I still do a bunch of freelance writing for Slam. This was an awesome opportunity. We shot Zion, Luka, and Jason Tatum for the cover of Slam Kicks, and that shoot was actually out in Paris. So that
Yeah.
was
Yes.
an unbelievable experience. And we were there with Jordan Brand because each of them was like unveiling the latest in their signature lines with Jordan. Yeah, I mean, they're what was interesting to me is like how much storytelling, how much goes into just the process of
Mm-hmm.
designing these shoes,
Mm-hmm.
which I obviously knew a little bit about, but just how intricate it is and how meticulous it is was honestly it's incredible to kind of hear about. Each shoe kind of incorporating obviously their games, and they have guys who
Mm-hmm.
basically study film on the Jordan team of each player, like a coach would, to discern like the precise movements of each player so that they can design the shoe exactly to that player's game. And then, the other piece is like the storytelling behind each shoe. So
Mm-hmm.
just like to take Zion for an example, what was important to him is to kind of communicate this out the mud mentality that he has, and this kind of lesser told part of his story where, everybody sees Zion, and obviously he's been in like every highlight mix, and he's this phenom.
Mm-hmm.
And the side that people don't see is kind of the grind and what led to the player that he is today and the obstacles that he had to overcome to get to where he's at. So he wanted the shoe to really communicate that. And so the design team runs with this idea of like a mud splatter design on the shoe that communicates like out the mud. And the mud actually is this material that strengthens the shoe, and provides more support, which is kind of parallels this idea that like that out the mud mentality and the obstacles that Zion overcame is what makes him strong, and kind of the player that he is today. So that's just one example of how much goes into these sneakers, and being able to to hear it from not only the players, but also the design team, everybody at Jordan Brand, was just an awesome experience.
I think it was really dope that wrote that piece, because one thing about, you see what goes into creating a signature shoe. You see like the stories that are told and just the pride the players have with having a signature shoe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it was surprising to hear Rich Paul talk about he wouldn't, something about he wouldn't recommend, or getting a signature shoe in today's market is about ego. I don't see it that way. I see it as, if you can't build a whole brand of business around it or whatever, like the Jordan brand, when he was saying, but to me, your piece spotlights why players still want signature shoes, because it's telling their story. It's, these shoes are designed specifically for them and their movements, and it's a part of their brand. It's a part of who they are. And this is achievement for a lot. A lot of players enter the league with their own shoe. Like, it's not, I don't see it as an ego thing. It's a goal. It's an achievement. So I thought his comments on that was a bit off. You know what I mean? Like, it was surprising to me, but
I agree with you. Look, I grew up like wanting my own signature sneaker too. Obviously fell drastically short of that, but for these guys, this is something. I mean, Jason Tatum spoke with me about, obviously he looked up to Kobe as a kid, and getting Kobe shoes and emulating Kobe and wanting to be like Kobe. And now, like you said, this is an opportunity for him to, it's another canvas, like you said, for him to share his story, and then also to inspire the next Jason Tatum, and to kind of, convey what helped him get to where he's at, so that somebody else can follow in his footsteps. So, I totally agree with you.
Now let's get into the book. I was introduced to the book because I'm a part of, the Net Galley site, and they, they had your book on there. I was like, okay. So when I read it, I couldn't put it down. Like, some people I had to reread a little bit, because I just want to make sure I got the context of it all. Like Joe Young, his story, I was like, my goodness. Like, and I don't want to give away, like, in the book and what happens with people. Like, I already looked that stuff up. People haven't read it yet, so to go into spoiler filled, we're not going to do that. I wouldn't do that to you. So we're going to talk around. Let's start with talking about, okay, you were able to follow the Birmingham Squadron for a whole season, and this was an idea you had. How did you get that idea and go about pursuing getting this opportunity?
So I guess to start, like, the idea came from just me covering basketball for, a handful of years, being such a huge basketball fan, and kind of always being surprised at how little attention was paid to the G League, especially since it was growing every year. Obviously they have the Ignite now. I just think increasingly there's a bigger spotlight on the G League, and there's more and more players coming from the G League and having an impact in the NBA. I think the stat, like, for last season was like 47% of players on opening night rosters had G League experience. And by the end of the season, it was like 55 or it had gone up. So the G League's importance to the NBA was just growing and growing. And I had just kind of looked at the market and been like, there really is nothing about the G League out there. Obviously, let alone a book, there was very little just like coverage of it at all. So that was kind of the inspiration. And then I decided to basically, in order to get the experience, I needed to follow a team and be like fully embedded to really write about it. Like, I thought I had to kind of experience the G League as opposed to just like, interview people and write about it from afar. So then I was like, I need to follow a team. Which team do I follow? And Birmingham was a new team. And as people have been pointing out, purely by coincidence, my last name is the same as the team name. So there was a part of me, I must admit, that like felt like it was destiny for me to follow that team. So that was, obviously I had my experience at Slam and knew a bunch of people in the basketball world, and basically just sent a cold email. like saying, this is the idea. I'd love to just come down there. I'll pack up my bags and move tomorrow if you guys would let me just kind of be a fly on the wall and follow you guys for the season. And I have to shout out both the Pelicans, who is the affiliate of that team, and everybody within the Squadron organization, because they welcomed me with open arms. They basically were just like, do what you got to do, follow us, travel with us. I went to games, practices, film sessions, team dinners, basically everything they would let me go to, I was there. And so that allowed me to really, get the access and get the experiences that I needed to put together the book. So,
and also get the players and get everyone involved comfortable speaking with you and opening up to you, because you got some really good detail in the book. And describe what it means to endure the grind. Like, when someone hears that in relation to the G League, what should they picture?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because, obviously there's I think what people think about is the physical aspect of the grind. I mean, these guys, this isn't the NBA. So the facilities are, they don't even compare to what guys have at the NBA. The resources don't compare. NBA teams, players will admit they really don't practice that much. And G League teams practice a lot. They watch a lot of film. These guys are obviously trying to get to the next level. So they're working out a ton outside of just like their, like day-to-day requirements with the team. So there's a huge like physical grind, just the amount of work that they put in, and obviously the schedule too, it's a little compressed. So there's 50 games in a shorter span, a lot of like back-to-backs, 4 games in 6 nights. So these guys endure a lot there. But I think like the main thing that stood out to me is the like mental, psychological, emotional grind. Because, this is the minor leagues. These guys are making less than $40,000 a season. They're right there. They're on the precipice of millions. Two-way contract even is $500,000. A 10-day contract is usually double a G League salary. So they're right there. And, they're told they're close, and they keep fighting. And there's all these obstacles that keep coming your way. And you have to just keep going and keep chipping away. Because if you, sulk, if you take days off, if you, let those emotions kind of get the better of you, it'll hurt you. It'll decrease your chances of making it. So you really just have to kind of stay head down and keep grinding through all of the kind of adversity that comes your way. It's just, and the pressure, of course, is like, every game is like a job interview. These guys there are scouts there. You make one mistake and it sounds, like an exaggeration, but these scouts don't get to watch your whole season. So a scout could be there and you could not hustle back on defense, and the scout can just cross you off the list because I saw him play for, a couple minutes and he wasn't hustling the way that I like. And that could be it. It really could. So you really can't afford to slack off, and to deal with that pressure on a just everyday basis is pretty crazy. And it was interesting to witness it up close for sure. Oh, sorry, Maliika, I think sorry, hold on. The sound might be cut off here.
No, that was me. You got the perfect person when it comes to endure the grind, kind of Andre Ingram, to do your forward. How did that come about? And it has to be an experience for him, with him starting from the D League and then going into the G. It's grown since he was playing, and it's almost a completely different experience. So how did you get him to write the forward? And he's been in the G for he could have been played overseas. He could have went overseas and made so much more. So I was curious what it was like to get him to Right. If he's the perfect person to write the forward because he's still on the roster with the South Bay Lakers. So I wanted you to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, totally. He is to me, and I think to
The
most
ultimate
people,
and endure the grind.
the ultimate endure the grind, the ultimate G leaguer. And
Hmm.
then obviously, for people who don't know, he had this kind of storybook call up. He had been in the G League, or it was the D League, so in the minors for over a decade, and gets called
Hmm.
up for the last few games to the Lakers. He was playing for South Bay, which is the Lakers
Hmm.
affiliate, and in his first game, he's got gray hair now. He's, like high 30s, and he's just been grinding for so long to get there. And he scores 19 points. The Staples Center crowd is going crazy. It's on the brightest of stages. So yeah, like that. When I saw that, like, and just rewatching before I did this, I'm like, this is why the G League is important. This
Hmm.
is why I want to
Hmm.
follow it, is to follow stories like this. So I knew, like, pretty much right away that, like, if I could get, like, that's who I want to write forward. That, like, if I can get him, that would be amazing. And he was playing for South Bay still during the season I was following the Squadron. So when they came to visit, I just requested to speak with him, and we talked for 10, 15 minutes after the game. I told him the idea, and we exchanged numbers, and I just said, like, I'd love to have you be more involved in any capacity. And Andre, if anybody has had the pleasure of knowing him, he is like the nicest guy in the world, and could not have been more helpful. And I'm super grateful that he is a part of this, because I really do think that, like, no G League book would be complete without Andre being a part of it. So yeah,
Yeah,
it was
I
awesome.
agree. I agree. I loved him. I loved his piece from the forward talking about the D and then transition now to the G League. And he's the head of the union, right? Or he's working with the
Yeah.
union.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
I think that's very important. One of the key things, though, with the G is you have a mixture of players with different stories, right? You have a player who was on an NBA roster. He was in the NBA, and
Mm-hmm.
then he's playing overseas, and now he's on a G League team trying to get back to the NBA. You have players who just want that chance. They have their routines. They putting in their grinding season in, season out, not going overseas because they don't want to miss their opportunity. They want to get that magic call up to where they can turn their life around, turn their fortunes around. You have players who fresh out of college, or they were playing Division 1 or 2, and they're trying to make an impression. We'll get to the two-way players in a minute because that's a whole other thing I want to get into. But when you look at that mixture of players, and when I was reading this book, these players were still able to find some synergy. Like watching that with their different, because the player that played overseas in the NBA, of course, he had more financial resources than some of the others.
Right.
And there were, players were aware of that, but they didn't come in between. You didn't see any. It doesn't seem like there was petty jealousies or anything like that. So, because he's here, so obviously he's
Right.
trying to get back. So,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wanted you to talk a little bit about that dynamic of the different stories.
No, definitely. It's like, I, I want to say in part I lucked out, because I think the team that I followed was just so unified, and the coaching
Hmm.
staff was awesome, and they were so connected.
Yeah, we got to talk about
Um,
that too. Yeah, the coaching
yeah,
staff.
I mean, I was, to be honest, like, I was expecting some fireworks, and I was like, this would maybe be good for the book if I saw something, like, just something go down. Like, that's kind of what I thought would happen, because, like, one of the other pieces, you're right, everybody has a different story, everybody comes from
Hmm.
a different background, and also you have the added kind of layer of, like, assignment players coming down, which can
Hmm.
cause a lot of tension, because you have these guys who've been grinding in the G League all year. They're like, every opportunity matters. These, like, hot shot rookies come down, and all of a sudden they're on the bench, and they're taking, or they're starting, and the G League guys have to move to the bench, and it creates, like, an even more kind of awkward and
Hmm.
strange
Hmm.
dynamic. So I've heard stories about, for sure, there's been teams that are not unified at all. That it's all about me, me, me. Everybody is kind of
Yeah.
trying to, showcase themselves, which is an understandable approach. But I think what every G League coach and every kind of NBA scout and executive would tell you is that they're looking for the guys who play team basketball, who, aren't one-on-one ball dominant players who are like basically trying to put on a show themselves. They're looking for guys who play within a system, who get along with their teammates, who don't create any locker room problems, and who play, very specific roles as opposed to being the guy. So once like the players accept that, and I think everybody on the team that I followed did kind of buy into that, it becomes a little easier to stay unified. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I think it's not always that way. But it definitely was.
You got a good lot with this one.
I had a great group. And
you had a good group.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the things in this book was one of the things that made me really curious. I'm a Nets fan, so my team is the Long Island Nets. Mm-hmm. And I also watch the Hornets, so I follow sometimes the Greensboro Swarm. And it's interesting looking at the coaching philosophy and what he was teaching his players. Coach Pannone, I think how you say his name?
Pannone, yep.
And his what he was teaching, and when I look at other G League teams, some of them don't preface winning. It's really development. And if they lose, they lose. That's what it seems like. Wow. With them, it's like, like teaching them that scoring is not really what these teams are looking for in terms of role players. They're looking for players that do all the other things. And so going out there scoring 30 or 35 is not going to get you that call out. What else are you doing on the court? And I really, because coaches are also trying to be seen by teams.
Right.
Like, it's not just the players who are fighting for a shot. It's also the coaches. So what were your impressions of the coach? And do you feel like he would be a great addition to an NBA roster as an assistant coach? Because you see more of that now. Like the coach of the Long Island Nets is now an assistant coach with the Nets. So I was just curious about how you
I guess to the first part you were talking about just about him preaching that message of kind of winning above everything else. I mean, it's just, if you look at the guys who have come from the G League, it just makes sense. It's not the guys who are the like one-on-one ISO dominant scorers. It's the guys who play really hard defense, who are good 3-and-D players. Caruso, Gabe Vincent was a big G League guy. And, he's just a guy who runs the offense. And I know he showed a little bit more in the playoffs, but, he's someone who just, Pannone would always say, just do your job, do your very specific job. I think that message was well received. And I think if you just kind of look at the history, like it's obviously true. That's kind of the guys that get called up. Pannone, I don't want to kind of give away his journey at all, but I'll just say that from following him, from knowing him and talking to him throughout the season, he's just like a brilliant basketball mind.
It seems like it. I was like, I would love to, see him and, I did look him up. So, but I would love to, see him further, prosper further and coaching.
No, definitely. He's not only like the amount of work that he puts into it. And I hope that the book captures this because it's not just a grind for the
passionate. Like he's passionate about the game.
100%.
He lives and breathes the game. And that's what I got from these players too. Like everyone involved lives and breathes. Yeah, they want their shot, but they love the game. Like this particular team. And
definitely.
So
because I think you have, Maliika, to like, I think you have to be in the G League. You have to, because you wouldn't sign up for it. Like the truth is, these guys can make more money overseas. They can not go through the grind that they do, but They love the game. I mean, you have to love the game to sign up for the G League, and they are very, very passionate about achieving their goal, which is to go to the NBA. And so that is something that comes across when you talk to any G Leaguer, when you follow a team, when you're embedded. Like this isn't just like show up to work and whatever happens. These guys are really going for it, and they really care, and they really love the game. So that was refreshing to be around.
Can we talk about the two-way players who and their impact on playing time? Because when they sent down, they need playing time because the top club, the NBA club, wants them to work on some particular things that will help the big club. That help them develop to help the big club, because there are areas that they're not, they need to spice up on. But when they do that, it disrupts the rhythm of the starters. Like they know they have to, they know they're going to not get as much playing time that night. And observing that up close, what was that vibe like? Like I always wonder about that.
No, I mean, and this was 2 seasons ago that I was following the team, and the guys that were getting sent down were Jose Alvarado, Trey Murphy, Jackson Hayes. So these guys who
stars,
they were blossoming. I mean, Trey Murphy was, by the end of the season, and Jose Alvarado playing significant roles in the playoffs. So
I caught those names. I was like, well, it's not like they were sitting down,
right. And it was like obviously proof that the process was working, because they were coming down and they were getting the development that they needed to impact winning at the next level. But you're right. I mean, it's just the truth is that players struggle with it. And you just have to, G League players, that is, you just have to understand that it's not personal. It's not about how you're performing. It's not a punishment. It's just a business. Like this is, at the end of the day, this is a tool for the NBA parent club to develop the guys who are G Leaguers to hopefully one day get called up and make an impact for them. But more importantly, to the NBA team to send guys down to develop who they expect to be major pieces going forward. So I guess I would say that it never, from what I observed, it never became something that completely threw a player off. But to say that it didn't, impact just their mindsets going into a game or the way they were feeling would be it's impossible for it not to, because they'll be starting and playing 35 minutes, and then a guy gets sent down and they're playing 20 minutes coming off the bench. And it's just harder to show what you can do in that time frame. So I mean, I kind of was expecting maybe some tension to bubble up, but it really was
the reality of the grind.
Yeah, it's just the way it works.
It's just the way it works, even for players that played it. And that's why I want to go. I have only had a few more questions. Some, you have a clear example of a player that was considered, he was drafted, he was on the NBA roster. He was getting playing time at one point and eventually ended up overseas. And then he is now in the G trying to get back. And I'm not going to give away the reasons that he was in this position. What was it like observing his journey and trying to get back, especially in the wake of this is the COVID season, when players were getting called up in numbers, and watching this take place, and this is a guy fighting and just wanting that one opportunity to show how he's grown. What was that like?
No, totally. I appreciate you not giving away spoilers. I'm going to try to do this without giving away too much. So we're talking about Joe Young.
It's a tightrope.
I know. And his story is so compelling. without giving away too much, Joe, like you said, was in the NBA.
I
And
need to say the name. See.
I think I revealed that. I think I revealed that early. But Joe, basically, the kind of like overarching theme of his story is that he was in the NBA, kind of screwed up his shot the first time around, went overseas, became a star overseas, and then realized that he really wanted to get back. And again, without revealing too much, I think what stood out about his story is, one, just the amount of sacrifice that he was willing to, just the amount of stuff he was willing to kind of give up to chase the dream again. I mean, he turned down a $3 million offer in China to accept 40 grand in the G League, with the hope of getting back to the NBA, which is obviously an absurd sacrifice. And he fully bought in. I mean, he had this workout routine called the Breakfast Club, where he'd get up at like 5 every morning and be in the gym by 5:30. And that's before practice. That's before film. He would do that on game days. I mean, the guy was like an insane worker, and just so badly wanted to get back. And I think what you learn throughout, I won't give away the ending, but what you learn kind of throughout his story is that it's as hard as it is to get to the NBA for anybody. It's even harder when you're trying to get back and you've made mistakes. So, overcoming even the smallest of mistakes when you've been there and you're on the margins is really, really hard. And so it was honestly inspiring just to see how hard he worked just to try to overcome what was such an uphill battle for him. I think I did an okay job of not spoiling too much, but I should probably leave it there.
You gave it a little more. I was skirting around the outskirts without giving out, not saying the name.
I appreciate that.
But I found his story to be so compelling, as opposed to like Malcolm Hill, who since you said a name,
that's okay.
Story, he definitely resonated with me. A player who has his habits, who has a strong belief in not, breaking his routine, who is a ferocious worker, who this was his dream. The reason why he came back to the G League year after year, this was his dream. You had the Alex Carusos and other stories of players making it. He believed he could be that. He could be a player too. So when you're thinking about, when you're looking at his story versus like a Joe Young and some of the others, and you as a writer, you're observing their work ethic, their workouts, their passion and love for the game, and you're writing their stories. As you sit here now, the book everybody will have a chance to buy it soon, like by October 1st, the latest. What do you want to say about, what do you walk away with about this story? And also, I'm going to add to that, when you think about these players on this grind, enduring the grind, do you want to say or suggest, or what in your head are you screaming, you can probably get a deal in another country and you will be appreciated there, bigger audiences than you have here, making more money. The NBA is not the end all to be all. Do you want to say that, or do you just I understand the grind, but at some point you gotta smell the roses, kind of thing? Like, how do you balance?
No, definitely. It's something you think about so much, because that's really like, that's the G League, kind of the core question. The G League is really like, chase the money or the dream, because pretty much every player, especially the top players, they can make significantly more, 6 figures, some cases 7 figures overseas. And it is really the dream. The NBA just clinging to that keeps them around. To answer the first part of your question, I think what I walk away from it with is I think the story is, and I hope this came across when you read it as well. Like, I think it's obviously a basketball story and a sports story, but it's really about like perseverance, hope, sacrifice, just like the pursuit of a dream, and everything that goes into that. So I hope that people walk away from it like I did, very much inspired by these 4 players that I chose to follow, just how much they're willing to put into their craft and how much they're, how passionate they are about pursuing their dreams. I think that they would also encourage like everybody else to pursue their dreams like they are, no matter what happens. So I think that that's the main thing I walk away from the experience with. And then, I think it's a really good question, because at times, you will be watching a player go through his career, and from the outside, you're screaming to yourself, like, you're a great player and you're losing out on all these opportunities, all this money overseas. Like,
and not just the money, you'll be playing in front of, those are professional leagues as well, and you'll be playing in front of an audience, learning a new culture.
And great leagues, totally great leagues.
Great leagues. There's some great leagues out there. Great competition. Like, why? And I watch the G League often, especially with the Long Island Nets, because I'm always curious of what players are in the pipeline, who's coming up, who's coming, and who may get a shot. You know what I mean, for the Nets. I'm always so I watch them often, and it's so interesting watching that fire from players. And I love reading your book, because I felt for all the players and the coaches. I was like, I want them all to make it.
Oh man, imagine being there. Oh my God,
I want them all on the roster.
And the reality is they just can't be, because there's just so many. There's such a small.
Everybody outside the NBA is fighting for that spot,
right?
International and in the G. In the G, you're closer, but everybody's fighting for that spot.
Exactly, and there's 400.
Now overseas is considered sexy. You know what I mean? So you're fighting against that too. So.
Yeah, and it's, I think the main takeaway is, because I did talk to players who were very open about, look, I missed out on a lot of money, like players who spent years and years in the G League and played 20 minutes in the NBA, 1 game, 10 games. Like, they were in the NBA for 3 months and they spent years in the G League and didn't go overseas and make money overseas. And, a lot of them they don't have regrets, because they, to say that they played in the NBA was the most important thing to them. And to some people that probably sounds crazy, but it's every player's choice, obviously. And it's hard to kind of tell somebody, give up on your dream. Like, how do you tell somebody to just essentially abandon hope and jump ship and go overseas without really knowing how important that dream is to them? So I think it's really like up to each player to decide. And, I think that what the coaches will do, and what, people in their circle will do, hopefully, is tell them realistically what their chances are, so that they can weigh these options and try to have like a clear mind about it. But, there are certain guys, again, I won't name, because their stories are in the book and I don't want to spoil it, but there are certain guys who, you could have told them they had, the teeniest of chances, and they would have still stayed clinging to that.
That's true.
For some guys, it's just that important, and it's hard to kind of.
It's a dream over the dollar, and being able to reach your dream and play in the NBA, even if it's just for a game, even if it's just for 2 games, is achieving that is what they're fighting for. Is just so hard reading it and seeing that grind. This is just one team, like like they're I forgot how many, like 27 or something.
It's up to it'll be 31 if you count the Ignite this year. So
the Ignite is different though.
Definitely different. Definitely.
That one's going to be a separate podcast for me, because that team is different from the rest of the G. So there's 30 teams, about 30 teams in the G League. So this is just one team story. So I don't want to go into detail about because I think that gives too much away, talking about when we had the COVID policies and how people, like, and the impact that had on G League teams. But, one of the things that I love about your book is it brings the story to life. G League is expanding. They're getting they're getting corporate sponsorships. They now have a union. Like they just got, G Leaguers even, like, I feel like now each year it's just grown. I know people that have season tickets to the Long Island Nets and they look forward to going to those games. So I love that this book will be out there for people to look at what life is really like for these players. Traveling commercial.
Right.
And like traveling commercials on these tiny planes and their
It's
tallest hat.
crazy.
It's just crazy. Because people, we didn't even mention that, but that should have been the opener. G Leaguers travel. They travel commercial and economy. So no matter how, economy. So
Yeah,
that's their reality. That's part of their reality. Like eating
totally.
Kentucky Fried Chicken and Chipotle and not getting those per diems that the NBA get. They got to get what they can get. So
Yeah.
totally different realities, man.
Right. No, yeah. And for me, I've always been drawn to kind of the underdog stories and
Yeah.
the guys who have to battle through all of those obstacles that you just named. And yeah, I think for me to be able to shine a spotlight on the G League, I mean, I fully agree. I think it just doesn't get the recognition, or hasn't gotten the recognition that it deserves, the league overall, but the stories of each of these players, it's just not, the big names just don't get talked about. That's just kind of how the media world works. So to be able to one, tell the stories of these players, and then shed a light more broadly on the G League, hopefully people buy it and read it and start to follow the G League, because I really believe that the league is, first, incredibly entertaining, filled with incredibly talented players, but also just like it's inspiring to follow those type of stories and those type of journeys. So I hope that people do like the book and then become invested in the G League. That would be great for me, for sure.
Well, I appreciate you for spending time with me, talking about the book, talking about the G. And I implore everyone, order Life in the G by Alex Squadron. You'll find it on Barnes and Noble. You'll find it on Amazon. You can pre-order it now, and you may get it even faster, according to Alex. So I implore you to buy it. And so you can read these players' stories and read their life stories, their backgrounds, and what they're facing, and then look up what happened to them. Don't read about it before you read it. Don't look up where the players are before you read. Don't do that. And I was tempted, but I didn't do it.
I get way too much.
When I finished the book is when I looked up each player and and the coach. I looked up where they were.
Yeah.
And I didn't do it to the end. You're going to be tempted, but do not do it. And I want to thank you again for being here, because this book took me on a journey and I absolutely loved it, and I appreciated your perspective.
No, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, Maliika. Like I said, you were one of the first people to reach out about the book, and it meant so much just to have it out there and to know people were responding to it. And like I was saying before we started recording, I'm a huge fan of all the work that you do as well. So I just really appreciate your support and then having me on as well. This has been super fun.
I appreciate you, and thank you for being here.